This is Matthew Kratter's Bitcoin University, and today I want to talk about Coinbase paper Bitcoin. Most U.S. spot Bitcoin ETFs, including BlackRock's IBIT, use Coinbase custody to store the Bitcoin that backs their ETFs. And these Bitcoin spot ETFs, they trade like stocks during normal regular market hours, and they're able to provide price exposure to Bitcoin because they're presumably backed by real BTC held by U.S. custodians. Now, is there enough real BTC backing all U.S. spot Bitcoin ETFs, or is Coinbase custody holding paper Bitcoin too? Paper Bitcoin would just be a Bitcoin IOU that's not backed by real BTC, which means that it cannot be cashed in for real BTC. Why might this be a problem? Because it effectively increases the maximum supply of Bitcoin beyond 21 million, which could lead to Bitcoin price suppression. It can also blow up an exchange if everyone tries to withdraw their Bitcoin all at once, and there's not enough real BTC to cover all of the Bitcoin IOUs, similar to what happens in a bank run. Paper Bitcoin can also blow up an exchange if the price of BTC goes up a lot, since the exchange is effectively short Bitcoin by not having enough BTC to back all of its IOUs. And in this case, it would have to repurchase it on the open market to make good on its claims. And the more the price of Bitcoin goes up, the more difficult and expensive this becomes. Now remember, there are no bailouts in Bitcoin. The Fed cannot print up some extra BTC for free, as they can with US dollars, to make Coinbase or anyone else whole in an emergency. All of this stems from a tweet that Tyler Durden did. He's effectively erased the original tweet, but his concern, as he said, was that Coinbase custody and Coinbase could turn out to be something like the next FTX and cause industry disruptions. Brian Armstrong responded to Tyler Durden's claims. We'll go over that in a minute, but as summarized by Duo9 here, Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong just admitted that you got to trust them on their word. They will not provide any proof of reserves for the Bitcoin that they claim they have, nor any proof of backing for their new paper Bitcoin called CBBTC, which is something obviously you don't want to touch. This was Brian Armstrong's response to that original Tyler Durden tweet. Baldylocks here, I guess that's the mean name that Tyler Durden was calling Brian Armstrong, who doesn't have a lot of hair, as you can see from my thumbnail. Baldylocks here, not sure what this is all about, to be honest. All ETF mints and burns we process are ultimately settled on chain. Mints are when you create new ETF shares by buying Bitcoin and then issuing the shares against the Bitcoin. Burns are where you retire shares of a Bitcoin ETF and then sell the Bitcoin that is being held by the custodian. And Brian here says that all ETF mints and burns are ultimately settled on chain. Institutional clients have trade financing and OTC options before trades are settled on chain. This is the norm for all our institutional clients. All funds are settled in our prime vaults on chain within about 1 business day. If you want audits, Deloitte audits us annually. We're a public company. I doubt our institutional clients want people dusting all their addresses, and it's not our place to share for them. This is what it looks like if you want a bunch of institutional money to flow into Bitcoin. As for CBBTC, yes, you're trusting a centralized custodian to store the underlying BTC. We've never claimed otherwise. And I think these things always start out honest and then they get corrupted over time. And what's happened to the US dollar over the last 100 years is a great example, or 80 years is a great example. 1944, we had the Bretton Woods Agreement. The US dollar at that point was fully backed by and redeemable for physical gold, or pretty close to being fully backed by physical gold and redeemable for physical gold by central banks and nation states. Fast forward to 1971, France sent over a warship to New York City to redeem their US dollars for actual physical gold. US government Treasury said to them, oops, we can't give it to you because we spent it all on guns and butter, welfare, social programs in the Vietnam War, which is to say that the US government printed up more US dollars than it had gold to back them. Bretton Woods started off honest and ended up like every other human institution, completely corrupted over time. So here's where I think we are today with the US spot Bitcoin ETFs. I believe that all major US spot Bitcoin ETFs, including BlackRock's IBIT, are indeed fully backed by real BTC held by Coinbase custody and other custodians. What makes me believe this? Before I explain that, I would just ask you, if you're enjoying this video so far, to please help to support the channel. Click the subscribe button. That really helps to get my message out. That really helps with the YouTube algorithm, as does liking this video, clicking the like button, leaving a comment, question, suggestion for a future video, asking for clarification. Also sharing this video with a friend or family member. So why do I think that the US spot Bitcoin ETFs are all fully backed? Well, for one thing, if you want to talk about IBIT, which is the largest of the ETFs and is sponsored by BlackRock. BlackRock is a global $9 trillion asset management firm. They don't F around. They like money, as the guy says in Idiocracy. And BlackRock's executives hold a lot of shares and stock options that benefit from increasing their earnings and stock price. So BlackRock is not here, at least at this point in history, to suppress the price of Bitcoin by issuing paper BTC. They're here to grow the assets under management, the AUM of their spot Bitcoin ETF, by getting more investors to buy IBIT, and also by pumping the price of Bitcoin, which leads to more investors having FOMO, fear of missing out, and wanting to buy IBIT. Now, why do they want to grow the AUM of IBIT? That's because they get a sponsor fee. They get paid 0.25% on the assets under management, which currently are about 20 billion. So this is a big business with a lot of money. BlackRock is a publicly traded company with legions of accountants, lawyers, regulators, and investors watching everything they do, as is Coinbase. Coinbase is a publicly traded company with legions of accountants, lawyers, regulators, and investors watching everything they do. BlackRock just wants to clip coupons and collect their huge management fee, that 0.25%, and they're not going to let Brian Armstrong and Coinbase screw up things for them. So BlackRock itself has no incentive to cheat here. Coinbase could possibly have an incentive to cheat, but it's being closely watched by BlackRock and by everybody else. And it's important to remember that BlackRock and Coinbase are not fly-by-night companies run by Sam Bankman-Fried and his orgy buddies from some crypto frat house in the Bahamas. So making comparisons to FTX, I think is a little bit of a stretch at this point. Both BlackRock and Coinbase are very serious, highly regulated U.S. companies. And if BlackRock and Coinbase wanted to work together to commit fraud, and it's hard to understand what the motivation for this would be since they can make more money by being honest, but if they wanted to conspire to commit fraud, it would require vast amounts of coordination, including trying to stop many employees inside their companies from becoming whistleblowers and thus collecting millions when they blow the whistle. So if it's not Coinbase paper Bitcoin that's been suppressing the price of Bitcoin, then what's going on? It's of course impossible to know for sure, but my guess is that there's just been a lot of OG whale selling of Bitcoin. These OGs taking advantage of the new liquidity introduced by the ETF buyers to convert a lot of their BTC to mansions, ranches, yachts, private jets, etc. And this doesn't mean that these whales believe that Bitcoin has permanently peaked. It just means that the OGs want to cash in and buy some nice things since life is finite. There's also been this reshuffling where a lot of money has left GBTC, the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, and entered IBIT and other spot Bitcoin ETFs with much lower management fees than GBTC has. We can see the progression, the number of Bitcoin held by each spot ETF beginning on January 10th. I believe the ETFs launched on January 11th. At least that's when IBIT launched. And we can see here the names of the holders of the ETFs. Here's Grayscale Bitcoin GBTC, which started off with 619,000 Bitcoin at the beginning of this journey, and as of a day or so ago had 222,198. So they've been shrinking their Bitcoin and their Bitcoin holdings as the other ETFs have been growing their Bitcoin holdings. This means that the number of Bitcoin held by these ETFs, there was quite a bit held on day one, the day right before the ETFs launched, when GBTC was still a trust and had been converted over to an ETF. But basically, we've gone from 621,000 Bitcoin to 907,000 Bitcoin. So it's not as much as you might think. And as of September 14th, that's a net purchases of 287,000 Bitcoin since January 10th, the day before the Bitcoin ETFs launched. So when people see hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin, or almost 1 million Bitcoin in the ETFs, what we've really had is a reshuffling as well, and that can explain some of the lack of price follow through that we've been seeing. Now, what BlackRock could do with IBIT, its Bitcoin spot ETF, is they could do proof of reserves in a similar way to what Bitwise, which is another Bitcoin spot ETF, is doing, where they're disclosing the actual Bitcoin holding addresses where their Bitcoin is secured. So for example, here they have 37,000 Bitcoin in trust. These are the Bitcoin holding addresses. And what's happening is they're using this company Hoseki to do an attestation and to basically audit and show that there's enough Bitcoin in those Bitcoin addresses to back the Bitwise spot Bitcoin ETF. And you can look up these addresses yourself. I'll put a link in the description notes below. Of course, it doesn't tell you whether they still have the keys to sign it. All it means is they were able to sign a message when Hoseki did their attestation. So proof of reserves is great, and BlackRock and Coinbase should do the same. But again, it does not provide a guarantee that Coinbase custody will make that Bitcoin available to Bitwise or anyone else in an emergency, especially in an emergency where Coinbase did not have enough Bitcoin to process all withdrawals. What's the summary? The summary is that anyone who is short Bitcoin through IOUs, through derivatives like futures or otherwise, will end up blowing up in the end. If they're playing games, this is not a game that they can win, and that's because Bitcoin is not like physical gold. Bitcoin cannot be suppressed through LBMA, London Bullion Market Association, unallocated accounts like gold has been for decades. The LBMA gold price, which is a global benchmark price for unallocated gold, is an agreement to transfer. Unallocated just means you have these allocations, an agreement to transfer gold between parties without physical delivery. And the problem with this is this system allows for large volumes of gold to be traded without the need for physical transfers, helping thus to suppress the price of gold, which central bankers love. Now, Bitcoin cannot be suppressed through paper Bitcoin as easily as gold can be suppressed by paper gold, because Bitcoin is so easy to zap around the world. Bitcoin is so easy to take possession of. It doesn't require boats and planes and guards and large insurance contracts to move it into self-custody. And anyone can spin up a node to verify and audit the global supply of real BTC. This is something that you simply cannot do with physical gold. So ultimately, paper Bitcoin is only a problem for people who leave their BTC on exchanges like Coinbase, or who own a spot Bitcoin ETF that ends up not being fully backed at some point in the future. If you're holding real BTC in cold storage on your cold card hardware wallet, which holds your private keys, it doesn't actually hold your Bitcoin, but it allows you to control your Bitcoin. If you're holding real BTC in cold storage, you can sleep well at night knowing that you own the real thing. Everyone who plays paper Bitcoin games will get wrecked in the end. They will be unable to cover their shorts or make themselves whole without going out into the open market and buying real BTC, thus causing the price of real BTC to skyrocket. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the subscribe and like buttons. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I publish my next video. And let me know your questions and comments in the comment section below. Thanks all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.